from the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news.
So we've all been through a collective trauma over this last year. We've all been through it, and all of us have had our well-being impacted. Sometimes in good ways, sometimes in not so good ways. And unfortunately, as with all trauma, we are going to be re-triggered over time. And I believe if we can focus on well-being, if we can focus on strengthening our own well-being and strengthening the well-being of others, we can shift the conversation, build our collective resilience, and get over this and get through this trauma together.
Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Wyatt. Welcome to this week's edition of Consider This. Our topic, unmasking COVID-19. Joining us to talk more about it are doctors Chris Kelly and Tony Hill. Chris is a professor and chair for the Department of Gerontology at UNO. He is seated 6 feet from me here on the set. Tony is an associate professor and ECFA program director at the University of Nebraska-Kearney. She is practicing physical distancing across the studio. Welcome to both of you. Dr. Kelly, I want to start with you. Looking at that opening video, this year, no doubt, has been challenging for everybody. Talk specifically about its impact on our older adult population.
Well, Kathy, we passed a tragic milestone this past weekend with the 500,000th death from COVID-19. And 80% of these deaths have come among people age 65 and older. Especially at risk have been our older adults that are receiving long-term supportive services in the home and in residential care communities such as nursing homes. And many of these individuals who died from COVID-19 were denied the opportunity to have physical contact with their spouses, with their children, and with their loved ones and friends. And so we have all suffered from this pandemic greatly, but our older population and those of us who care about them have suffered a disproportionate share of this burden.
Dr. Kelly, one of the major reasons that we were told our older adults would need to be isolated, for lack of a better term, was to keep them safe. We heard that all year long. We're just trying to keep them safe. How do you respond to that?
I first would like to acknowledge that without the efforts of our frontline healthcare and long-term care workers and our informal caregivers, particularly family caregivers, the death toll from COVID-19 on our older population would have been much higher. But what made their jobs and lives more difficult was the lack of a clear and consistent message from our national and state leaders on issues such as social distancing, on wearing masks, and on washing hands consistently. Because our older population was so vulnerable, and because the message was so mixed, our providers of healthcare and long-term supportive services had no choice but to quarantine this population for as long as it did. And this has added to the suffering that those dealing with COVID-19 have experienced. It has not only reduced the quantity of life for those who died in nursing homes and at home from COVID-19, they had a reduced quality of life. And I find that to be unacceptable.
Yeah. Research is showing that this greatest generation may be more resilient than we thought. It's been tough, but they've handled it as well as anybody could be expected to. How would you respond to that in terms of that resilience piece?
I think that can certainly be attributed to the three older generations that we have in our country today. The oldest, as you mentioned, the greatest generation born between 1910 and 1928. These include individuals who survived the flu epidemic of 1919, followed by the Great Depression and World War II. The silent generation that followed endured World War II and the Korean War. The baby boom generation, many of whom are turning age 65, These are individuals who went through the Vietnam War, who went through the civil rights movement in our country. So our older generations have shown perseverance, and they've shown a willingness to do whatever is necessary to help our country out of difficult situations. We would do well as a country to follow their example.
Dr. Kelly, tell us about the Department of Gerontology here at UNO.
We are a department that is celebrating its 50th year next year. 1972 was our founding. Since that time, we have grown to encompass an undergraduate as well as a graduate program. We have a Bachelor of Arts in gerontology. We have a undergraduate certificate and a minor in gerontology. We have a master's degree and a doctoral degree in gerontology. We offer courses on campus in Omaha and Lincoln and worldwide. And increasingly, due to the pandemic, it has been our online presence that has necessarily grown to meet the needs of our students.
You've witnessed a great deal, I could imagine, in the time that you've been here, and those folks who have gone before you. Likely nothing like this pandemic. Talk about its impact in your department and how the conversations have been going over this past year.
Well, I think we can look at it in a couple of different ways. We can look at it from the experience of the student, and we are lucky enough at UNO to work with students that are also managing family and career responsibilities. And so it has been a learning moment and a teaching moment, not only for our students, but for us as faculty as well, because our students include many of the frontline workers that I've mentioned, persons who work in long-term care facilities such as nursing homes and in residences such as assisted living. And we can no longer speak to the abstract. We have a public health emergency that is still unfolding. And the lived experience of those that were on the front lines when the COVID-19 pandemic developed are going to be valuable teaching tools for many years to come.
Yeah, you mentioned the online piece in terms of the curriculum. Did you find that you sat down and really formalized maybe some changes to adapt to this year, or was it really more take it one day, 1 week, 1 month at a time and try to incorporate what was happening at that time into what it was that you were teaching the students?
That's a very good question. I think we took the approach of adjusting on the fly 1 week at a time, both in terms of format as well as content. We realized quickly that we could not gather as a group for our on-campus classes, so we had to adapt. We had to adopt a remote or Zoom teaching model, and we continue to teach many of our courses in a hybrid model with students participating live in person or on Zoom. But we've also adapted to include course content because the experience of working in a nursing home has changed significantly in the past year. And courses that I teach, courses that my colleagues teach that address long-term supportive services are updating our materials constantly to reflect the reality on the ground.
Okay. And I've asked this of a lot of our guests. In all that has transpired, Dr. Kelly, what has been the greatest lesson for you this past year? What have you learned in all of this?
My greatest lesson has been not to take for granted the personal relationships in my life. To know that this disease does not discriminate. It has affected lives across the lifespan. It has affected us regardless of gender and race and class and all the other ways that we divide ourselves. It has taken its toll. And because it has made it impossible to do some of the things that we like to do, which is to gather as a family, gather as a community, it makes every contact that I have, whether it's in person or by remote, just all the more valuable. It has reminded me of the people in my life that I love, and it has reminded me to always be aware that not to take life for granted.
Okay, thank you.
Live every day like it's our last.
Yeah. Dr. Hill, Dr. Kelly has talked a little bit about the biopsychosocial impact that COVID-19 has had on us. Talk to us a little bit, if you would, about cultural disparities.
I would say that COVID-19 has highlighted the disparities that already existed for many cultural groups. So the challenges that individuals have had to face related to housing, transportation, income disparity, that's only been negated or been more negative as this COVID has spread around the world. So if you have an individual that has difficulty with accessing health care, quality health care, that's only been magnified with this pandemic. So it's a very serious issue for all cultural groups, all individuals. As Dr. Kelly mentioned, this pandemic has not discriminated, but we know that with disparities, they're only heightened when you have something like this health crisis happen.
Okay. Vaccinations, those efforts are underway, which we hope means the beginning to the end of this pandemic. Dr. Hill, I'm curious, when people ask you, okay, what does that mean? How are we going to move forward from here? What are you telling people?
Well, I'm very optimistic. I am very hopeful that the lessons that we've learned, the experiences that we've had, that we keep the positive. So, for example, we know that the pandemic, COVID-19, was not just a medical issue. It required a lot of team building, cross-disciplinary approach, and I hope that we learn from that and we can continue to do that. So some of the benefits that have come from COVID, the increased use of telehealth and telemedicine, I think that will continue in the future. For example, you can have medical visits that save time and money by using technology, and I hope that we continue to take the positives from this experience and move forward. So the vaccine is one component of that, but there are many lessons that we've learned or should have learned from this, and I just hope that we continue on the positive slant upward.
Yeah, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about that whole collaborative piece. There's not a person with whom I have visited about this topic who hasn't said, we're doing such a good job of collaborating with one another. From where you're sitting right now, talk about that in your own experience. So what have you seen in terms of people you may not have come in contact with, right? Now you're meeting them, you're talking, you're brainstorming. You are looking successfully ahead to the future together. Talk about that collaborative piece.
I think that is part of not just being a faculty member and teaching, looking for resources, but also working together in any community projects. You're bringing more people to the table because you need them. We need all the people that can put their hands on deck, so to speak. And so it's definitely been a more integrated process. It's a cross-disciplinary process, an interdisciplinary process. We're just willing to sit down with just about anybody at this point to make sure that we address, that we serve people in the best way that we can, whether it's our students or meeting the needs of the community. And so I definitely, through Zoom or other forms of technology, have reached out to people that I probably would not have. Some of that was just distance. Traveling 3 hours to have a meeting wasn't as easy, but now it's one button and we're able to collaborate more effectively than we would have prior to this pandemic. It's forced us to work together and work better, I hope.
What a great segue you have created to get us into the Aging with Passion and Purpose conference. The theme for this year is Unmasking COVID-19. Tell us about the conference.
The conference started in 2007 with the community as well as UNO, the campus. So it's been around for a while. The focus is always to educate the community and professionals as well as lay persons about older adults and issues that impact older adults and the aspects of their world. And this year promises to continue to do that. It's an exciting time to bring so many diverse individuals together, diverse fields together.
Yeah, and so this committee, Dr. Hill, tell us, who are these people, right? And how do they come together and come up with these themes? I mean, we're talking about people from different walks of life here. Talk about that.
Over since 2007, there have been a number of topics. Spirituality, they've looked at the intergenerational workforce issues in terms of technology with aging, and also making sure that we include or not leave anyone behind. So it's very diverse topics, but also a very diverse group of individuals from the community, but also from the campuses as well. So in the community, we're talking about Emmanuel, the art of aging, Methodists, I just don't want to forget anyone, Region 6, Anoa, a number, intercultural center. There are so many different individuals that are involved in the community that are giving their time to put this conference on. And from the campus at UNO, we have individuals from the social work department, from gerontology, and then I'm from the University of Nebraska at Kearney, and in family science. In my department is counseling and school psychology and family science, and they are a supporter of this conference as well. So we have a variety of individuals. I hope I didn't leave anybody out. I'm sure I did, but just know that it took a collaborative effort to get to this point.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, unmasking COVID-19, the theme this year. Take us back, Dr. Hill, to when the committee first came together and talk about that brainstorming that is being done, looking at, okay, so what are we dealing with right now? And this year, obviously, I think that was probably unanimous. But then how on earth do you start to drill down to get all of that into one day?
I think in the past it's been input from participants in the conference as well as committee members. This is 2020 was my first year being officially part of the conference. In 2019, I assisted because of the flooding in central Nebraska to bring a remote location to UNK's campus. But there are, this year, COVID took over. No matter what the plans were prior to that, COVID took over. And so individuals in the committee largely sat down and thought, what are some central aspects from COVID related to this population that we need to highlight? And that's how we got to where we are. And that's just looking at, social aspects, biological aspects, the medical aspects, and issues like loneliness and things like that.
Okay, and you didn't have to go very far to find your featured speakers. We have some of the best in this area. We're going to go ahead and put up photos here. Dr. Hill, tell us what's important to know about these three experts we're looking at.
I think we're very fortunate, as you mentioned, we have some of the best. And we were very fortunate to be able to get all of them to participate in our conference, and they committed. We're looking forward to keynotes. Speeches by all of them. Dr. Rangel will talk about mental health and wellness and issues such as loneliness. Dr. Gold is going to talk about, where's the research, where's the treatment aspect. He's with UNO and the Med Center. And then our closing keynote will be Dr. Poor, who's from County Public Health, but it's Douglas County, but it's certainly relevant to all of the state. And she has a lot of information that she wants to share with us.
All right, Dr. Hill, what else is important to know about the day? These are three people, three pieces to the puzzle, so to speak. What else do you have to offer for the day?
Well, we have panel discussions where we'll bring individuals that are working frontline in the field to come and talk about what it's like to be dealing with this pandemic and what it's like to deal with this pandemic in conjunction with working with an older population. We also have a memoriam where we're going to honor individuals. As Dr. Kelly mentioned, we unfortunately reached that milestone of 500,000 individuals that have passed. Locally, we will look at some of those individuals, so there will be recognition and honoring of those individuals. We also will have a poster session at the end of the conference, and that's a chance for students, faculty, and community members to present their research or their planned research around this topic.
Okay, and of course, a pretty big deal when planning a conference, I would imagine. You are going to live stream this year. Now, to have a conference in a building, in a particular space is one thing, but to live stream is a whole different ballgame. Dr. Hill, talk to us about how that's going to go.
Well, we're very fortunate. We have you. So we're definitely benefited from your knowledge and your connections, and we're so grateful to UNO Television. They have the skills, they have the resources, they have the technology, and it's all here. We have over 500 individuals that have registered for the conference, so how in 2021, early 2021, could we have a conference that's safe and healthy? We couldn't do it without your help, but also without the wonderful resources here at UNO TV. That's making our life a lot easier.
Okay. Yeah, everything from what pre-recorded to elements that are going to be live. And did you mention the panels? There will be 2 panel discussions. Can you talk briefly about those?
Those will cover a variety of topics, spirituality, social aspects, a number of different topics related to COVID. And so these are frontline individuals that are dealing with it daily, and they will share their knowledge with us.
Okay, thank you. Now, Dr. Hill, am I missing anything in terms of the actual planning piece? You've talked about the committee members and sponsors, those folks who help make it all possible in terms of the funding piece. Anything I'm missing from where you sit as a committee member and obviously someone who's very actively involved at UNK?
I definitely want to thank the committee members. It's been a collaborative effort. It's taken a lot of time to switch from an in-person planning to switch topics when COVID became in the forefront. And so the individuals have worked really, really hard behind the scenes. It promises to be a very engaging event, and there's still time to register for the conference. So while we have over 500 people, we welcome more. And so this is a record number of participants, and we are looking forward to having everyone learn more about COVID-19 from this perspective.
Okay, Dr. Hill, thank you. Dr. Kelly, I want to ask you another important thing I think to mention here is the fact that this conference will be at no cost to people. Talk about the significance of that in light of what we've been through this past year.
I think it's significant for a couple of important reasons. We know about the physical and emotional toll of COVID-19. The financial toll has been enormous. And so when we have the opportunity to offer a conference of this quality with the speakers that you mentioned, with the expertise and knowledge that they have, to ordinary individuals, to persons living with COVID, to caregivers, to formal supports, to students, to make that material available at no cost, I think is an acknowledgement of what the need is as far as financial need is concerned, and also ensures that we have a broad audience and a broad perspective of individuals whose own experiences will be reflected in the day. Okay. And so I'm very happy that we were able to make this decision, and we look forward to welcoming participants from across the state, across the country, across the world. Okay. This is a unique opportunity.
Dr. Kelly, I want to mention something here because I think it's really important, especially when we stop to think about how alone people have felt this year, regardless of your profession, right? This is your first year as chair of the Department of Gerontology. You've obviously been involved for years, but this was your first year as chair. Talk about the importance of coming into a position like that, first of all, but then secondly, jumping into planning for a conference like this, knowing you have that support base, right, of people with whom you've worked in the past. I'm not going to assume, but I would imagine that was probably kind of a feel-good for you and gave you a sense of assurance that, you know what, I'm not here by myself trying to do this. I've got just a bunch of people around me.
It is, as Dr. Hill mentioned, we have just tremendous support from academics at our different institutions and with our community partners and our sponsors. But the leadership core, as you mentioned, has been pretty consistent since the conference started in 2007. And I've been involved in planning before, and to see your face and other familiar faces across the table or on Zoom has been a reassurance to me like I said, in my first year, we're taking on an unprecedented challenge in having an all-remote conference. But I was confident that we have, and we do have, the team to pull it off.
Okay, final thoughts. We've got about a minute and a half remaining. Talking today about unmasking COVID-19, you're very close to the older adult population, obviously, and their families care very deeply for that group. Anything, Dr. Kelly, that you would like to add here in terms of your role as chair and the conference, putting it all together and helping everybody move forward?
I would like this conference to connect more than we ever have before with students across the NU system and students across the country. But in particular, in our community, because students who are interested in aging and interested in older people have not had the face-to-face opportunity, whether it's through a practicum experience or to work in a long-term care residence, that this conference can be a step towards educating them in the needs of this population, so that when we are ready to go back in full force, we are ready to do that, and our students feel that they're ready to take on this challenge.
Well said. Drs. Kelly and Hill, I want to thank you both for joining us today and sharing your time and expertise. Obviously, I want to wish you the very best with the conference. I want to thank our students who are working so hard behind the scenes. Folks wanting more information can go here. Unmasking COVID-19, it's Monday, March 15th. The number 402-554-2272. You can go to unomaha.edu and search for gerontology. As we close, scenes from Lewis and Clark Landing in Omaha, as seen through the lens of Nicholas Perry, a junior at UNO. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you next week.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information and program archives can be found at netnebraska.org/considerthis. If you'd like to share your comments about this program, call UNO Television at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours, or send an email to cwyatt@unomaha.edu.